I'd like to welcome everyone to the Monroe Planning Commission regular meeting. It is Monday, August 11th, 2025 at 7 p.m. Hannah, can you do roll call, please?
I'd be happy to. Commissioners present and establishing a quorum. We have Commissioners Falk, Blair, Dawkins, Lockhart, Lowe, Petrino, and Walsh.
You. And we do not have anyone signed up for public comment this evening, so we will go ahead and move on to approval of minutes. Agenda items 4.1 and 4.2. I believe we can combine those, correct? Was it? Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from both July 14th and July 28th, 2025.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion, any additions or corrections to the minutes? No, all right, all in favor, say yay.
Yay.
Opposed, say no. All right, it's approved unanimously. Moving on to agenda item 5.1, which is a public hearing to receive comment on proposed amendments relating to permit processing, and Washington Senate Bill 5290 as it pertains to local permitting. And Kate will be presenting this. I'll officially open the public hearing. Kate will be presenting.
Thank you. All right, so this evening, before I start the slideshow, I just wanted to run through what's in your packet again. It includes additional information about Senate Bill 5290. This is all about local permitting. It includes the staff report, which goes through the criteria showing that it's consistent with our requirements of the Monroe Municipal Code, both chapter 2274, which is amendments to the municipal code, as well as 2284, which is the permitting. This project is exempt from SEPA. It's all administrative. You also have each chapter that is impacted or affected by the proposed amendments that strike through underline, a copy of Senate Bill 5290, a copy of the public hearing notice, and the email from the Department of Commerce. They accepted our request for an expedited review and provided no comments. So with that, really quickly, I'm gonna run through this. We've had a couple of conversations on this already. Again, in 2023, the Washington State Legislature passed Senate Bill 5290, and it's all about local permitting. The original version was passed in the 1990s. It was part of a package called regulatory reform. And basically, it's the state saying, if you have a comprehensive plan and you adopt development regulations, your development regulations should be implementing your plan. Not only that, you should be looking for efficiencies when you're doing reviews. So you're not making an applicant go step A to step B when then things can be reviewed at the same time, such as an environmental review with a conditional use permit. And so this new bill was really looking at additional efficiencies, and the goal is to increase housing capacity. There's a crisis in Washington State, and so this is one of their additional tools. In addition to the regulatory component, which I'll go through in a second, there were 3 grant opportunities. Again, it was all about efficiency. One was for digitizing your records, which Monroe had actually already been in the process, so we weren't eligible for that. The next one was adopting a permitting software. Again, Monroe was already in process, so we couldn't go after that one. And then the third one had to do with creating a similar process that we go through land use for your building permits review. So it'd be quicker, and we chose not to go after that one. So the real components that we're working on have to do with the time clock. So back in the 90s, that time clock was a generic 120 days from the time an application was deemed complete until the time an application or a decision was rendered, with a few exceptions. Subdivisions are regulated differently under state statute, and so that does not change with this. It didn't change with that, which is 90 for preliminary and 60 for final. And so the new time clocks are based on what kind of public participation do you have. And so if it is an administrative decision, which for us is an accessory dwelling unit, which we've just been through those code amendments, that would be 65 days. There's no public review period. It's a decision by the hearing examiner. The next level is 100 days, so it's still an administrative approval, but no, or in that one, there's public comment. So that's taken into account. You have to notice in the paper, you have a certain comment period, which is typically 14 to 28 days, depending on the type of project. And then the third category is 170 days, and that's for a public hearing. Again, you have to notice it. You have to account for your public hearing being scheduled. For us, we have a hearing examiner, so we also need to build in that time that the hearing examiner renders their decision at the end of that comment period after the hearing. In addition to that, the state said, well, we want to put a little more teeth in this. And so if a jurisdiction does not meet that time frame, and you have not already had a written agreement between the applicant and the city would now be responsible for refunding a portion of the application fee. It's 20% if it's 20% over the time frame, and then it's up to, let me get this wrong. I'm gonna look it up because I'll get it wrong, but there's two different amounts of money depending if you're over or under 20% of the time allotted for the initial application.
When I read it was 10% and 20%.
10 and 20, thank you.
That's
See?
what I thought it was.
Should never, a lot of things stick up here, but not everything. Well, thank you. Okay, so next one. So this is just an overview to remind you where we've been on this process. Initially, I just gave you a brief overview of what this project would be back in January. I brought you all of the draft changes between June and July. I included reviewing all of the proposed changes with our attorney, just to make sure I was doing things consistent with state law, because I did want to make some changes unique for Monroe, and that is part of the expanding the 4 different permit types to 6, which I'll get to in a second. And now we're having our public hearing today. The other note on this slide is just to bring your attention, the state law changed, they superseded our authority. So even though we did not adopt these by January 1st, those new timelines are already in place, and staff has been following them and letting applicants know that this is where we're headed. We're in the process of adopting. And then the final part is the reporting, which I think we discussed at an earlier meeting. We now have to send a report to the Washington Department of Commerce. How many permits did we issue of a certain type? What was our timeline? How many times did we stop and start the clock, which is allowed? We need to ask for additional information. On that one, we only had 2, and this is before the new time changes. So this is everything from last year. And those were already had been agreed to exceed the timeline in writing. So from our point of view, we were 100%, we get the gold star. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so then just quickly running through all of the chapters that are being touched by this code amendment. The first one is 3.34, and this is the one that's adding in the new provision for if we do not meet the time frame, we can now give a refund. Section 2210 is the first section of the Unified Development Regulations. And this is clarifying 2 things. The first one is clarifying that administrative interpretations are a type 1 permit process. And then at the very end of that chapter, there is a provision if the city is revoking or modifying, for any reason, clarifying the public participation process, because that is a public hearing before the hearing examiner. So that was a clarification. In chapter 2212 definitions, I'm not going to run through it, but there were quite a few. Again, this was clarifying what was either adopted by state law or making clarification, so it was easier to understand what we're getting at. In section 2250, the sign code, this is the very last section of that chapter, and it's adding in administrative departures, which is identical to what is in our design standards, and then clarifying the variance process. So if you can't do an administrative departure, then there's another chapter for variances, and it's very specific on what that process is and the criteria you need to follow. In chapter 22.158, This was new. Originally, it was just one type, and we're actually breaking that into two because this is, the site plan would be Wendy's as an example. It's a commercial project that comes in. That project was exempt from SEPA, but we also have, like the Lake Tide building that was not exempt from SEPA. It had critical areas, and so we're creating these two tracks. They're both approved by the zoning administrator, which is the community development director, but one requires a different type of public review because of SEPA. Chapter 2266 variances. This was a very short change in the formatting. In 2268, there are three real changes. We are exempting the wireless facilities that are leased. That's actually a state code, and we didn't have that. The reason I'm adding that in is we actually had an inquiry this year. I'm like, here's an opportunity to fix that. We're clarifying that subdivisions are a three-step process: preliminary plat, civil plan approval, and final plat. And then updating the formatting requirements. And the last note on this one is the city of Monroe, the city council used to have the public hearing and had to make the decision on preliminary plats. For over a decade, the city's used a hearing examiner, which is like a land use attorney. And so there were still references to the city council. So again, this was an opportunity to do some house cleaning. Chapter 2270 development agreements. This was a very easy change, going from a resolution as the adoption tool to an ordinance. In chapter 2272, amending the UDR, this is just confirming that we are moving this from a type 4, which used to be the legislative review, to a type 6, which is the new legislative review. The same is true for chapter 2274, amending the comprehensive plan. And then we get to the one that has the most changes, and that is chapter 2284, our permit process. It exempts building permits specifically. Not only was that in the 2023 legislature, but that passed, there was another law that passed this year that clarified that. It updated the timelines that I've already spoken about. And we changed the permit types. It used to be 1 through 4. 1 and 2 were your administrative, 3 was your public hearing. Those are not changing. Type 4 is now a hearing examiner holds the public hearing, makes a recommendation to city council that is specifically for site-specific reasons. Then type 5 is a brand new category, and it captures the things that only go to city council, and that is a development agreement and annexation. So those weren't, we had footnotes for them previously. So again, this was an opportunity to clarify. And then the type 4 permits have now become type 6, and that's all of the legislative, the code amendments, the comprehensive plan amendments, pre-annexation zoning, which would come to you first. You would hold the public hearing and then make a recommendation to city council. And then with that, all the tables were adjusted to reflect these changes. And so the two other clarifications were the appeals section. There were some footnotes used on decisions. The two things, if an administrative decision is appealed, that goes to the hearing examiner. At that point, if you want to appeal it again, it goes to Superior Court. For comprehensive plan and zoning code amendments after the city council, that goes straight to the growth management hearings board. So we just, again, took this opportunity to clarify and do some house cleaning. So that is a really quick overview. I know you've been through this several times now. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I have a recommendation for your consideration tonight.
Any questions? Kelsey?
Thanks for the presentation. Nothing's been changed since our last meeting, right?
Correct.
Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? No? All right, then we will move on to public testimony. And we do not have any members of the public present, but we will formally open and close this.
Can I make a motion to open the public testimony portion of the hearing?
Thank you for the motion, Brandy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tony. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right, it is open and we will now close the public testimony portion of the hearing.
I make a motion to close the public testimony portion of the hearing.
Second.
All right, thank you, Brandy, for the motion and Tony for the second. All in favor, say aye.
I,
All opposed? Motion is carried. And is there any further commission deliberation? No, all right, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Brady.
Second.
Thank you, Tony, for the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is unanimous.
Second part of that.
All right, and now we move on for a motion for an action on the proposal.
I will make a motion to move to direct staff to draft the planning commission findings of fact and conclusions, recommending that the Monroe City Council approve the proposed code amendments relating to the local land use permitting processes in Monroe Municipal Code, chapters 3.34, application fees, 22.10, UDR, administration and enforcement, 22.12, definitions, 22.50, signs, 22.58, site plan review, 22.66, variances, 22.68, subdivisions, 22.70, development agreements, 22.72, amendments to unified development regulations, 22.74, comprehensive plan amendments, and 22.84, permit processing.
With great appreciation for the person who made the motion, I second.
Thank you, Brandy and Tony, for the motion and the second. Is there any final discussion from commissioners? No? All right. All in favor, say aye.
I,
All opposed? All right, and the chair votes aye, so motion carries unanimously. Get back to my agenda here. Thank you, Kate, for the presentation and for all of that, and I know we've done this a few times, so it was kind of a quick and quick move through things, but it was good. All right, moving on to discussion by commissioners and staff, we will start with the community development May and June monthly report with Hannah.
All right. Hello, commissioners. I'm here with a combined monthly report for May and June of 2025. We'll start at the top. You can see our numbers for our building permits, inspections, and code enforcement and business licenses. Just there to the left. If you have any questions on that. As far as the pre-application meetings go, we had 4 pre-application meetings in the month of May. One for a metal workshop on Taddy Avenue. One for Chick-fil-A. They're proposing to demolish and replace the existing Red Robin building with a new drive-through Chick-fil-A restaurant. Another pre-application meeting for a naturopath office on East Main Street. They are proposing to remodel the existing building and use it as a naturopathic primary care office. And Sharina Beans was proposing to use the former Matthew House building on the corner of 177th Avenue and Main Street as a coffee shop. And there was one pre-application meeting in the month of June for a subdivision and commercial condos on 169th Drive Southeast. I wasn't involved with that one, so I don't know how many lots were proposed for that, so I don't have much information. Does anyone have questions on the pre-apps for May, June?
Have any of these moved forward further since then?
No. Bob?
What does it mean to have 2 drive,
The 2 drive-through lanes.
2 lanes?
Yeah, 2 lanes. And the project highlight for May and June is Wendy's. The Wendy's project has been an ongoing project for the last like year and a half or so. It started with a binding site plan. So they went through the preliminary binding site plan, which is sort of like a property subdivision process. So they subdivided their lot from the Fred Meyer's lot, and they created a new legal lot that they are building their restaurant in. So they did the preliminary binding site plan, then final binding site plan, and then the civils review, and then they got their building permits. Right now, they are building their actual building. They're coming in for their deferred submittals for things like their mechanical equipment and their signs and their canopy and some of the smaller permits associated with the building, but Wendy's is coming along, as you've seen, we've driven by the lot, so it's actually happening. Moving along to our projects page, some of the updates you might notice on here. Added under preliminary plat review is the Monroe West preliminary plat. They're on 134th Street Southeast. It's a 39 lot subdivision in the R7 zone. That is currently in review. And Wendy's has been moved to building construction rather than just building permit application. Other than that, not a lot of movement on this page. The building department issued 29 residential permits, 7 commercial TIs, and 7 single-family residents, and conducted a combined 174 inspections in May and June. That. The building department is very excited to fill the vacant plans examiner position. We have the awesome Xiao working with us. She's been doing a great job getting us caught up on some of our backlog that we've been sending to our consultants. So she's been doing a great job in that role. We're also continuing to work with our new permit system, and it's been great getting that more fleshed out as we're continuing that process. Our code enforcement cases for May and June. May we had 2 opened cases, June we had 5. May we had 18 resolved cases, June we had 25 resolved cases. Kevin is continuing to monitor overgrown vegetation and proactively pulling illegal stake signs that don't have the free sign permit you can get through the city. And we hold them for 10 days. Are some of the new business license applications. These are for general business licenses for like brick and mortar businesses. And under comprehensive plan updates, right now we are accepting public initiated requests to amend the 2044 comprehensive plan. The deadline for submitting comprehensive plan amendment requests is July 31st at 5 p.m.
So that passed already, right?
Yes.
Just stating that out loud.
Yes. I don't keep track of the days. I'm crazy. Don't look at me. Don't look at me.
Don't tell them vacation. Oh,
Under code amendments, a lot of these have been adopted. We've got our citywide rezone, conversion of existing structures to residential uses, the ADU code amendments. Some that are in the works right now is the commute trip reduction, unit lot subdivisions. Did you want to give any updates on those, or are those just?
No, well, the unit lot subdivision actually got put on hold. We've been having conversations with our legal staff, and they voiced some concerns, so we decided to slow that process down. It may be coming back to you, just a little time to make sure that not only are we consistent with state law, but it's doing what it's supposed to do for the city of Monroe. On the comprehensive plan updates, we did receive one community or public initiated, and that was by the PUD regarding the first airfield property. So that'll be coming to you. And then the community trip reduction, that was adopted as well. So basically, thank you all. We met our deadlines for all of the required changes by June 30th of this year. So I'm really appreciative for all the work that you all have done.
It is a totally competitive amount of work the staff has done.
Thank you.
Sorry to clarify on that, so what about the unit lot subdivision, since that had to do with the Senate bill?
So we got clarification. That one is not due was not due June 30th. It actually, we have, I feel like I put that in one of the forthcoming updates. It's actually not for another year and a half. So we do have breathing room to really look at it a little bit more. Okay.
And do we have any updates on the Connor annexation or?
Connor, not since our last meeting, it is with the Boundary Review Board, and as I mentioned at our last meeting, they had some concerns. It has to do with the legal description, and Amy had reached out and has had a conversation. Basically, the county is now concerned because there are two legal descriptions in the application. We all know which one is moving forward. But because there are two in the application, one was specific to the property boundaries. The other was the revision as required by Snohomish County. When you do an annexation that includes a right of way, they want you to take in the right of way, so it becomes your responsibility. During that same time frame, the Washington Department of Transportation was working on giving Snohomish County part of the 522 right of way, which is a part of Tester Road, and so working with all the agencies, we all agreed that this particular annexation would include a larger piece of land. And so my understanding, based on Amy's conversation, is they are now going to move forward. It actually meets the exemption criteria for the BRB's review. So I'm hopeful that we will have a decision soon.
Awesome, thanks, Kate.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions on the May June report? No. Awesome.
Oh,
Kelsey.
I was just wondering if there's been any talk about any of the vacant places downtown that are people going into, because there's quite a few right now. And it seems like they're kind of like moving away from there versus going into it.
I spoke with a business owner about Sky River Bakery today.
Cool.
So there is someone that's looking at going into that space. I'm not sure about any other spaces down there.
Thanks.
We'll go ahead and move on to, we'll start with, Lance online.
I don't have anything to add unless anyone has any questions.
All right. Kelsey, do you have any further comments tonight?
Nope. Thank you. Thanks, staff.
Bob?
Thank you, staff. Great reports. Just want to let everyone know that the Eaglemont 9 is development that's right behind my house, and they're being good neighbors. We're starting to build, and we hear the hammers and things, but we don't hear things that we're not supposed to do. So, and then they mind that, and they follow the conditions of approval. They don't violate the hours in there.
Really?
Well, thanks, Hannah, I'm glad to hear somebody's going into Sky River. I know a couple of spots, one in particular we're working on still. A lot of work to do, getting it out there and people to come in and look at it. I know a couple other places down with Thrive for sale now across the street. That's for sale too, so the whole building, I don't know. So we'll see what happens. But getting closer to the end of summer and school starting, so after all that. And thanks, Kate, for all your work as well.
Carla?
I agree, thanks Scott for everything you guys put together and show us and all the stuff on our agendas. It's a lot, and I know you guys do a lot of work, so I thank us for making our deadlines, but couldn't do it without you guys, that's for sure. Anyway, thanks. And then, I just want to say National Night Out was last week. And, it's something I've been attending for a lot of years, not just here in Monroe, previous. And it's just such a good time for, the people, the citizens of the city to really, see your fire and your police and your city, some of your city, officials that come and stuff. So it's really a good, fun evening, from what I've seen of different cities and that I've been to and stuff. And it's nice, nice to have it.
Brandy?
All right, thank you again, but I have a question that might add more work. So, is the purpose of a consent agenda to know in advance what is gonna be on the future agendas? Or is there a way, so that we could know what's gonna be on future meetings? So we could already be looking into it and versed on it before the Thursday we get the, agenda packets,
So like a calendar.
Yeah.
What's coming up.
like a
An
future
extended
calendar.
agenda.
Yes.
That is not the consent agenda. That is typically something that just requires one vote.
Okay.
What you're asking for is an extended agenda. And I would love to give you one, but I'm not that organized. I do have a few items on the horizon that I can absolutely put together for you.
Or right now, do you just happen to know what the next couple things are we're gonna be working on? 'Cause it
Critical
kinda
areas.
cools down a lot.
Yeah, critical areas. I had hoped to bring the phase two, well, there's actually quite a few things. But when I get to my piece, we've received some applications that take precedence. And so before the end of the year, Leanne will start working on phase two code cleanup. The intent of that project is the city had gone through a very long and intensive process to redo all of the definitions that include land uses. But the tables in the chapters were not updated to be consistent. So we have definitions for things that aren't in the code. We have things in the code that aren't defined. And so that's really kind of the heart and soul. And it's also the first real retooling of the code since it was adopted in 2019. So we've been hearing the code doesn't have this, the code doesn't have that, we're missing this. And so that will be a major project, but it will kick off. I'd like her to start that in December. The other projects that are out there, Anita will be coming back at some point with the multifamily tax exemption. She and I are trying to work on that schedule because she has been given both the Monroe West subdivision as well as the Monroe 30. The Monroe 30 is that area that just got annexed to the city of Monroe next to the Monroe Woodlands. And those have very finite timelines. So I'm trying to work around that schedule. She is also working on the phase two middle housing. So that is the companion to the temporary amendments to the R7 designation that allows for townhomes. So there's a companion piece that she's working on. I am hopeful that both of those projects we can start limping along a little bit later in the fall. And then Amy, I had identified to start working on some of phase two comp plan, which is the downtown Monroe and the US 2. She is now working on the Davis annexation and development agreement. So my resources have dwindled. As soon as I finish the critical areas or during that, I will try to take on at least one of the comp plans because I don't want those slipping. But that's what's on the horizon, and that is consistent with the work program that we had adopted earlier this year.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tony?
Yes, but someone's not organized, I'll try to organize.
Well,
Yeah.
just a reminder on paper.
Well, and then an extended agenda, I would appreciate also, and just make sure that this statement says it is not in concrete,
Yeah.
that it can be updated and schedules will be changing, which is the reality of all our lives. And so, yeah, you have it in your head. You wouldn't be where you are if you didn't. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Nope.
All right. Just because I've been waiting for it so long, I figured I'd note that Zipley Fiber is finally digging up my yard today. We have had our yard striped 6 times since they first announced they were coming in and the signs up, so they were finally digging this up today. So progress on the internet options available in the filings is occurring. Other than that, thank you, staff, and thank you, fellow commissioners, for these quick meetings tonight. It's good. Kate?
Yeah, so I just mentioned a couple of the items I wanted to give you updates on the comp plan. Again, there are, the city's initiated application is expanding the UGA to incorporate the Davis's property. Snohomish County has the authority, so it will be pretty much a technical change. And then if you recall, when we did the citywide rezone, there is one property that needs to, we did not change the zoning because the property owner wanted to keep the multifamily or the Smith Brothers, so we're doing a correction. We've got enough to meet our requirements. And then the second one is a single parcel by the food bank that inadvertently got changed to the professional office, so we're gonna make that correction as well. And then the PUD I mentioned. Then the Davis annexation, they're also looking at doing a development agreement. I can't remember, pretty sure I updated you on the process, but they had been really involved in our comp plan process. The city of Monroe chose not to look at their application, so they went to Snohomish County. But during our comp plan, they went to the city council and the council agreed that they would support their annexation request, with the hopes that we would see that multimodal trail extending along Chain Link Road, that they'd be able to create some kind of a pedestrian connection between 191st and Chain Link Road, that it would be a mix of development type. And so the development agreement will be addressing those things that the council found important to support the application. So that came in last week, I want to say. So we'll be pressing. Get a question?
In the location?
So that is, it's the last properties as you're going up Chain Lake Road, right beyond
Yes.
the existing city limits, and there are 3 parcels, 1, 2.
I know where it is. Thank you.
Yeah, it's around the city water tank.
Yes,
The next item, I just wanted a reminder, the temporary signs. Hannah kind of touched on this with our code enforcement. Again, it is political season, and so those signs are included in what we call temporary signs. Leanne Barr has reached out to all of the campaign managers to remind them what Monroe's rules are and that you need to get the free sticker. You just have to come in and fill out your form. So I know that has happened, and then if it hasn't already, there will be an article in Monroe this week, and there will be social media posts just to remind people this is how Monroe treats all temporary signs. And then the final one, I just want to give you an update. I had a meeting with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife today, talking about critical areas, as I mentioned last meeting or 2 meetings ago. Their agency oversees the priority habitats, which is one of the major changes that's occurring between your last update and now. And it has to do, the priority habitat includes streams. And so there's new science. And so I'm trying to educate myself on what that means. And then I have a meeting already scheduled with the planning director up in Stanwood. They successfully got their critical areas code adopted at the end of last year. So I'm again trying to learn all I can. And so the goal is to come back to you on August 25th with, okay, here are the pieces that we're going to be reviewing. Here's some of the big concepts that we're going to need to tackle and come up with a better schedule. So that's everything for me.
Okay,
go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, where's the date? Did I miss it? Where's The Davis,
So the Davis property is, as you're going Chain Lake Road towards Brown Road.
okay,
It is the properties that are just north of our existing city limits,
Okay.
and they extend almost to, or they do extend to 191st. And we've got that water tower off
Right.
191st. Their property kind of, it goes around.
yeah, okay, I know what it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hannah,
I've got nothing.
if there are no objections, we'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. Good minutes.
Thank you.
That wasn't a hand up, that's a cursor, that's on his. On Stacy, it's still there.